People who have seen something they could never explain. What was the thing? Was talking on the phone to my dad in the garden, about 15 years ago. Saw an orange light slowly come up over some trees behind my house, then take off straight up at a ridiculous speed. Stood there in silence, and so did he. Explained to him what I'd just seen, and he said he'd just seen the exact same thing. He was over 100 miles away in Manchester at the time. I was staying the night with a cousin on his ranch, and in his front yard there was a basketball hoop on a homemade wall like concrete bricks stacked upwards. And we both to this day swear on God we saw what looked like a 8-foot-tall coyote standing up against the wall tugging on the hoop. We closed the blinds quick, and that was the night we established the existence of the ranch's very own cryptid. I think we called it like Doom Dog or some shit. We were 9 to 10. I fly helicopters for a living. I was working on a power line one year and was going back to our landing zone and noticed an opening in the trees, what appeared to be a leg. I came back and tried to get as low as I could into the clearing, thinking it was a person. It was a full-grown cow that had been completely skinned. There were no farms around, and the animal didn't appear to be cut up in any way. I went back to the landing zone, picked up one of my ground crew members and flew back with him just so he could verify that I wasn't crazy. The flight back, we were both kind of in awe because we have no idea how that animal got to where it's at. Even more so that it had no skin on its entire body. It looked like a perfect cow sans skin. I fly helicopters for a living. I was working on a power line one year and was going back to our landing zone and noticed an opening in the trees, what appeared to be a leg. I came back and tried to get as low as I could into the clearing, thinking it was a person. It was a full-grown cow that had been completely skinned. There were no farms around, and the animal didn't appear to be cut up in any way. I went back to the landing zone, picked up one of my ground crew members and flew back with him just so he could verify that I wasn't crazy. The flight back, we were both kind of in awe because we have no idea how that animal got to where it's at. Even more so that it had no skin on its entire body. It looked like a perfect cow sans skin. In my early 20s I was home alone. I woke up to my cell phone ringing but missed the call. The phone number I missed the call from was my home phone number. I got up and found the cordless phone on the kitchen counter. I looked everywhere, but no one was in the house and the doors were all locked. I was walking along a park sidewalk blowing off grass clippings. Got under some pine trees and through a break in the canopy an 8 to 10 pound rock came tumbling out of the sky, bounced and chipped the sidewalk and rolled down into a creek. Weirdest thing I've ever seen. A tree fell in front of us while we were driving. It almost killed us. Moments later a group of men dressed in nice clothes just happened to have chainsaws in their car, that was black and black tinted windows. They started cutting up the tree. We quickly turned around and said nope. I tried to tell myself that it was just Mormons, who happened to have chainsaws in the back of their car. I called my mom the other day to see if she still remembers that incident, and she does. In college, my wife, girlfriend at the time, had a nightmare that her pet iguana, at home with her father, had frozen to death after being left outside. She woke up sobbing, and that woke me up. I calmed her down and told her it was just a dream. We both eventually got back to sleep. The next morning her father called to say that her pet iguana had been left outside overnight and had frozen to death. This wasn't a recurring dream or worry for her. This was the only time it happened. Neither of us can explain the events without the aid of religion or one in a trillion coincidence. I, 13 at the time, was about to go to bed. I was brushing my teeth in front of my bedroom window, staring into the dark, when I suddenly heard someone screaming outside. I stopped brushing so I could hear it better. Someone was screaming out my name. I sort of froze and kept listening. More voices joined, all screaming my name and laughing loudly. It was kind of like an audience at a sports game. It went on for about 5 minutes. When it stopped, I, in shock, went downstairs to my parents to ask them if they'd heard anything. It was impossible not to hear as it was very loud. They had not heard anything. I assume it was some sort of a hallucination. Still feel weird when I'm alone in my room late at night. One night, years after high school and I'd gotten married, I had a vivid and very sad dream about the first boyfriend I ever really loved. We were 15 and 16, broke up about 3 years later because he really got into drugs. I had this dream maybe 9 years after that. I dreamed I was walking down a crowded sidewalk in some big city and I bumped into him going the direction I just came from. He was crying and he asked me for help. I can't remember if the dream changed then or I woke up, but it was just that little snippet of seeing his face. It was so clear. I still remember how his beautiful blue eyes looked. I don't know why I waited a couple more years to call his mother and ask about him one day when I recalled that dream for some reason. But I did call her. It turns out he had died in a freak accident around the time I had that dream. He had a car in his garage that he was working on. He had climbed on the hood for some reason, to do something, and he fell. Broke his neck and it was fatal. Now I'm always sad and a little creeped out every time I think of that dream. Probably always will be. I worked as an under-butler in a large Scottish castle in the early 2000s. One night, I was the only person in the house, and decided to throw a load of laundry in before bed. I walked down to service hallway, into the ironing room, and from there to the washing machine room. I got my laundry in, and then started to leave. I turned the lights off in the washing machine room, and suddenly everything was black. The lights weren't on in the ironing room. My first thought was it's weird that I didn't turn the lights on in here when I came in. But they aren't on, so obviously I didn't. The ironing room had huge ironing tables the size of snooker tables, and as I started to walk through, I kept bumping into them. After a couple of times of bumping into them, I was suddenly filled with a terrible, accompanied, watched, spine-tingling feeling that something was there and not to look toward the sewing room. I fumbled my way through the ironing room, back to the service hall in a panic. The hall lights were on and everything was fine. That is the whole story. I didn't see anything. However, there are some problems. To this day, I am confident that I turned the lights on in the ironing room when I went in. It wasn't possible to move through the room without bumping into things a bunch of times, as my exit demonstrated. The light in the ironing room was controlled by a very large switch that made a loud clicking noise. I didn't hear it click off when I was in the washing room. In the days that followed, the family and the butler returned home, and I had forgotten about the entire incident. A week or so later, I suddenly remembered it happening, and said to the butler, "I've never heard of any ghost stories at the castle. Are there any?" He kind of dismissively said, "Oh, they say there is a white lady in the ballroom, and is apparently haunted, but that's it. Oh, and they say the sewing room is haunted." I kind of gasped and told the butler the story. He seemed fascinated. He told the family, and a couple of them agreed that the laundry room was unsettling. I don't believe in ghosts, and think it was likely an unfortunately timed electrical fault and an overactive imagination. Still, I'll never forget how sudden and strong the feeling of a presence was when I was fumbling my way out of the ironing room. Two missing hours, I posted about it on another account. Setup: I used to be a home health aide for the disabled/elderly. I stayed overnights to help them get up, use the restroom, change, clean them, etc. I used to take care of a man named Mr. M. We kept an old large clock alarm that chimed every hour. Every 2 hours we'd roll Mr. M over, and change his pads. We recorded everything that happened in a notebook by the clock. Story: it was a usual day until around 2 a.m. I heard the chimes ring, twice, wrote down that I was going in, then went in, wrote what I did, changed his pads, wrote the time I got done, then went back to the kitchen where I sat every night, having my laptop set up to pass the time. About 15 minutes pass, and I hear the clock chime again. 4 times. I look at my computer, thinking the clock was wrong, and no. 4 a.m. I look at the notes, no new notes. I write that I'm going in. I go in to change Mr. M's pads. I walk in, and he looks at me and asks, "Weren't you just in here?" I said yeah, then went with changing his pads. They were dry, a rarity. I still have no idea what happened to those 2 hours. It was like 2 hours passed in 15 minutes. And 3 o'clock was skipped completely. I was watching a YouTube series at the time, and my video would have ended in that 2 hours. I have no idea to this day what the hell happened. To those suggesting a time change/DST, this happened December 11, 2016. When I was 18 years old, I was driving home from a friend's house with another friend. We were on the highway doing about 110 km/h and made this trip often. It's a big highway between two towns, so just fields either side. Something on two legs ran alongside my car. I saw it in the rear view mirror and out my side window. It was not a kangaroo, it was human-like. Had long arms and obviously extremely fast. My friend saw it too, and then it just went off the road back into the grass. Neither of us could explain it. As a kid on rainy days, I would grab my umbrella and jacket and play around in the rain, collecting raindrops. When I was about 11, I was playing outside in my front yard one day. I decided to go into the sidewalk to catch a bit more rain. I then looked into the street. It was a foggy rainy day, but I could have sworn I saw someone who looked exactly like me. Me being a kid, I panicked, ran inside for the rest of the rain, but I was still an idiot, so I never really told anyone, cause I thought that they wouldn't believe me. Not me, but my dad. When I was younger, my biological mom and her husband kidnapped me and took off to another state. My dad said that he was finally starting to accept that he may never see me again after nearly a year of searching, and then one day when he was on a walk, this little girl came up to him and asked, "Are you looking for a little girl?" He looked at her, confused, and she just turned around and pointed up the block at a group of kids playing, and said, "She's right there." He walked closer, past the girl, to try to get a better look and saw me in the group. He turned around to figure out what the little girl's deal was, and she was just gone, without a trace. Turns out my bio mom and her husband had come back to visit family for whatever reason. I used to call BS because the story is just so insane, but throughout the years, it's the one story of my dad's that never changed. Not one detail. He's told it so many times that I can recite it word for word, and he's always so fucking awestruck when he tells it. Like I can almost see him racking his brain, searching for the most logical explanation. I was 2-3 when it happened, and I'm now 26. He still can't piece it all together to this day. This incident happened to me when I was 10 years old. My friend and I were cycling. It was around 7:15, and it had gotten dark. There was a road where we usually cycled, but it was a dead end. There were bushes on one side and a wall with barbed wires. At the end of the road, there was a residential complex on the right side, and a small route led to the farms. The middle part of the road was all quiet and dark. My friend and I were just chatting and cycling when I heard a sound. I don't remember it well, but it seemed like a little girl weeping. Just as I was about to ask my friend, "Hey, did you hear that?" he shouted, "Run." Ah. When we reached the other side of the road where the residential complex was, I asked him, What the heck, bro? What happened? He was shivering in fear and said he saw a woman in the bushes with a big white eye. When some people appeared on the road, we quickly left. We were shivering with fear, and to this day, we don't know how to explain it.